We're going to save this starter set locomotive from the yard sale pile by upgrading it to DCC. Most model railroaders start with a starter set, and it gets you going in the hobby, but as you advance in the hobby, you'll tend to leave the old starter set behind in favor of more advanced models. The little engine you loved is now sitting idle, and in a way it's kind of sad. So we're going to give this engine new life. This loco is a Bachmann F unit, which is a classic starter set loco. When we open it up, we can see that it's pretty basic. The track power feeders connect directly to the motor, and a single light is wired to those feeders as well. Before we get into wiring, let's take a look at the basics of wiring for DCC. A DC locomotive has power coming from the tracks directly to the motor. Varying the voltage adjusts the speed, and shifting the polarity changes the direction. The light is wired into those feeders as well, which is why you see the light get brighter as more power is applied. For DCC, we are simply putting a decoder between the track power and everything else. Track power comes to the decoder, and the motor, lights, and sound are all connected to the decoder. Now, I've done a whole video on how DCC works, and I'm going to link that at the end of this video. Okay, let's get wiring. The first thing we need to do is cut all of our connections within the locomotive that we will need to wire up. First thing I do is remove the headlight, but I'm going to leave the wire mostly attached and just cut the actual bulb itself off because it's going to make wiring the motor to the decoder a little bit easier. Plus, the motor positive is orange, which is the NMRA standard for the positive connection to the motor for DCC. Next, I cut the track feeders. Red is the right side connection and black is the left side. Now I can begin attaching feeders from the decoder to the locomotive. I am using a Soundtraxx MC2H104P9. This is a DCC mobile decoder, so no sound, but it does have 2 additional feeders for other functions, and I'm actually going to use those in this project. Now for wiring, the NMRA has standardized the colors for wiring a decoder. Red is the right side track pickups, black is the left side track pickups, orange is the positive motor connection, gray is the negative motor connection, blue is the common positive for all of your lights, white is the negative connection for the headlight, yellow is the negative connection for the tail light, and this decoder actually has green and brown wires, which are additional functions. We start by connecting the motor wires. I solder the orange feeder to the orange motor wire. I then solder the gray decoder feeder to the black motor wire. That's a bit confusing because of the black track feeders, but just make sure that you are connecting directly to the motor and not the track feeders. I am sealing everything up with Kapton tape so that it's easy to change things if necessary. If I was going to do this as a more permanent setup and make sure that I was good, I would use heat shrink tubing. Next up, it's time for the track feeder connections, and this is pretty straightforward. The red connects to the red and the black connects to the black. If you have an older locomotive or are unsure of which side is which, it is the right and left side of the locomotive when you are looking at it from behind. At this point, our locomotive will run on the track, but it has no lights, so now I need to wire those. I start with wiring the common positive blue wire, and I need to put a resistor in this because I'm using small LEDs that can't handle the 12 volts that would be pumped through it, and they would be blown out. Depending on how many LEDs you use, your resistor need will be different. I have done a video on how to do the math on that, and I'm going to link it at the end, but if you don't want to do that, you will more than likely be safe with a 1K resistor, but if your lights are really dim, then you can use a lower resistor. I am connecting several lights to this setup. This is not necessary, and most people would just do the headlight and be done for this particular locomotive. The headlight negative is connected to the white wire from the decoder, and the positive is connected to that blue feeder wire where I attached the resistor. Now, I am wiring number board lights to the green function wire and a cab light to the brown function wire. These are all wired up identically to the white wire for the headlight. So you're doing the connections to the green wire or the negatives, and then you're connecting the positives to that blue wire with the resistor. I also said all that because it's really hard to see with my big hands doing all that wiring. Once that is done, I use some more Kapton tape to do a bit of wire management and put the shell back on. Okay, it's time for the moment of truth. Now, one quick note, when I bought these LEDs, I wasn't paying enough attention and I bought white LEDs instead of warm white LEDs. So that's going to be a bit of an issue I'm going to have to fix later, but it still shows that everything works fine. You're just going to see a slightly bluer white LED on this, which doesn't look exactly prototypical. You can check out those additional videos that I mentioned right here. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this. Until next time, I'm Jimmy from the DIY and Digital. Stay safe, be kind, and happy railroading.